Welcome to Resolving Reality, an independent Irish media platform. This is video episode 7, and I'm speaking to Olaf Dammegard, who is a specialist subject author and researcher who covers areas such as false flag operations, state-sponsored terrorism, and top political assassinations. Ola has also written 2 fantastic books on the assassination of Swedish Prime Minister Olaf Palme in 1986, called Coup d'etat in slow motion, volumes 1 and 2. Take a look at Ola's website, lightonconspiracies.com, for more information and articles. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel, Resolving Reality, and for all our other podcasts and platforms, visit our website, resolvingreality.com. Okay, Ola, good afternoon and welcome to Resolving Reality.
Thank you ever so much.
Great, thanks for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. I've been aware of you for many years now, and I know that your work covers a nice wide variety of topics, and I would actually consider you like a specialist researcher in a few key areas, being mass shootings, false flag terrorism, and also top political assassinations as well. For people who are totally new to you, what were the areas that kind of got you started down this road in terms of topics of research?
The thing that got me sort of onto this very strange path that I've chosen was the assassination of JFK. And I remember more or less the exact minute when it happened. It was back around 1980. I was visiting a friend, and in the middle of the night, they had cable TV. I'd never seen that before. And so I was lying in the middle of the night with a remote, and there was this documentary about the JFK assassination. And that was the first time I really saw the so-called Zapruder film, taken by a bystander, showing the impact of the bullet, this horrific impact on the skull of JFK, but making it very obvious that the bullet did not come from the back and up to the right, but it actually came somewhere from the right and the front, since the impact was backwards and to the left. And so what really confused me was that, it's a no-brainer. If you know anything about physics, you know right away that the impact of the shooter must have been standing in that direction. And so a thing like that can be sorted like in 30 seconds with normal logic, how was it possible that at that point, I think it was like 20 odd years almost, that major TV stations and news channels like History Channel and whatever, Discovery, but how could they not see this? I mean, they had super experts on their team, and then still they were sort of just confirming the official story. And at that time, I'd been working as a journalist for some years, and I was in the process of, I think that one of the things I learned as a journalist was to listen to what was being said, but also listen to what not was being said. Because often, I tell you, the real truth is hiding in the silence. When people avoid to answer, when they duck and dive, that is where the real truth is. So this really shocked me, I must say. I just didn't understand how is this possible. And that led me down this road that has taken me to I don't know how many different countries, and also into the areas not only of JFK, but into Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Abraham Lincoln, also the assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister Olaf Palme, which is a case that many people haven't heard of, but it's actually the most expensive murder investigation in the world. It is the biggest ongoing one. And it's an absolutely mind-blowing case that gets into so many different other layers internationally, and with incredible connection into the exact same forces that carried out so many of these other assassinations and false flag operations. So it was I see myself sometimes almost like Rain Man, like in certain areas I'm an absolute loser, but in this area, for some strange reason, it's like this meat suit that I'm living in was set up for this sort of thing. So I can't remember like song lyrics or chord progressions. For the life of me, I cannot remember them. we get into these areas, my head is like a database, I tell you. So I'm very grateful that people want to take part of what I've collected over all of these years, because I feel that this information is key to being part of stopping this madness that is going on in the world today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does sometimes, well, for most of us, I think it takes that one catalyst event at some point in our lives to kind of wake us up. And I know, of course, you wrote the book as well, Coup d'etat in slow motion, about, well, it was about Olaf Palme, but also other assassinations, and you kind of tied them all in together. But of course, that was in 1986, I remember. But the Kennedy assassination is something that's probably maybe even higher profile, and I had that movie made about it with Oliver Stone, and even in recent times, they still, of course, which you know, they will still officially talk about Lee Harvey Oswald and, you know, the official line. And after all this time, despite all the counter arguments, they still pump out this trash narrative. And I know there's a big backstory to the assassination, but even to condense it down and to go right to the core of this, who I know you had many enemies, JFK, but who was responsible for this, do you think? And also, why was he killed?
These are key questions. Many other questions in these mysteries are so much easier to answer. To who killed him, I would say it was an unholy alliance between dark forces, rogue elements of the CIA, the military-industrial complex, the FBI, the Secret Service, the mafia, and other, like oil barons and billionaires around the world. The whole reason, I think, was that up until the so-called Cuban Missile Crisis, he was a very young president. I mean, I think he was the youngest ever. I think he was only 46 when he was killed. And he was a rich man's son that was being brought in by the powers of his father. He came from a very, very wealthy family. And his father, who was a known criminal and bootlegger, when he got his son into the White House, it was the closest election ever, or it was like so close with Nixon. It was only a matter of 100,000 votes in total for the whole nation, which is nothing. And it was only through the help of Sam Giancana, the mobster in Chicago, Illinois, that they managed to get these extra votes and got him into the White House. But in the beginning, he was just like this glamorous playboy. We a change, yoo-hoo. But there was no real weight to it. But then came the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the world was so close to a third world war. It was a matter of there was this ship going with Russian missiles towards Cuba, and the US discovered them and said, if you pass this latitude or longitude, whatever it is, if you pass that, we will start full strike back. Nuclear, the third world war will be started. And by mistake, the ship passed this line. But thank God, Kennedy was sitting more or less with a finger on this red button that could have started this whole disaster. Global disaster and mass death. And people that were there said that he sat there with almost tears coming down his face, just saying, I refuse to be the one who does this to the world. And it's after, I think that was sort of like, almost like a revelation or an enlightening moment for him, where he just said, I am not going to be part of this. On the contrary, I will stop this madness. I will do everything I can to do that. And it's from there on, suddenly he takes a whole new approach where he says, I'm going to crush the CIA into 1,000 pieces. I'm going to withdraw out of Vietnam, which hadn't really started on the American part yet. I'm going to totally stop and fight the Israeli nuclear power program. I'm going to get out of the grip of the Federal Reserve. And it was just like unheard of. And he fired the top people in the CIA and some of the military people. Unheard of, absolutely unheard of. He kicked out Alan Dulles, Charles Cabell, and people like that. So also he got his brother to start chasing down the mob. And his brother, as an attorney general, got 700% more convictions against the mafia than ever. I mean, up until then, J. Edgar Hoover, since the mob had him by the balls, literally, with him being a cross-dresser and also homosexual, they had very, very powerful blackmailing evidence against J. Edgar Hoover. So he totally turned he looked the other way. When the whole mob was being built up there, he totally refused to even see it or acknowledge it. But then when Bobby Kennedy was at there, he started this witch hunt. And the mob was like, holy crap, what's going on here? We helped this guy into the White House. We sort of expecting quite a lot of favors as a thank you. And then he thanked us this way. So the mob also got in Giancana, Gambino, you have, my mind goes a little bit like this. I just had another interview. Sorry about that. But anyway, so the mob really went for him. The CIA that he wanted to destroy, then they want from him. The military-industrial complex, where he was pulling out of Vietnam, where you have to see that Vietnam was so much about drugs. It's the Golden Triangle, how to get the drugs from there into the Western world. And this is where Air America, all of these planes transporting soldiers to the front was also bringing back the drugs, including inside the bodies of cut up dead soldiers that were in caskets. Yeah, it was packed with drugs, and then a beautiful American flag on top of it. Thank you, and so this was the perfect way of trafficking without anyone knowing it. So lots of pissed off people, lots and lots. Also, Johnson was just about to go down because he was about to be pulled in court. He had, one of the things that he was rotten to the bone, lying Lyndon as they called him, and he had at least 8 people killed by his own private hitman, Mac Wallace. One of them, Johnson's own sister, he had her killed as well. So he was just about to go down, and J. Edgar Hoover was not going to be reelected. Now after Kennedy was dead, he was put there for life, and so there were so many people that really benefited from him being dead. And the reason why they did it the way they did it, if Kennedy himself had been the only problem, they could have just slipped a pill in his coffee or whatever, very easily from the inside, taking him out. But here they wanted to statue an example, show the rest of the world, people in power positions, not us, the normal person on the street, not for us, but for people in the corridors of power. They wanted to show us they can take out anyone, anywhere, at any time. So the message was back off and shut up. And this is also what you can see when so many of these big attacks happen, or black ops, when they're carried out, there's like a conspiracy behind the crime. And then there's like a secondary conspiracy of silence. It's either the official story or silence. This is one of the key things you will always see when that follows these things, because I'm not the only one that can see many of these cases are no-brainers. Absolute no-brainers can be figured out, at least to some extent, within a few minutes when you look on it objectively. So why are there not more people stepping forward in government positions, in the police, saying, oh my God, this cannot be true. Look at it, it's absolute madness. Instead, silence. Meaning that they're aware of the force behind it. And they are also aware of what these forces do with people that stand up against them. Equals destruction.
Yeah, I've always thought that as well, that it wasn't just one assassination, because there's been other big assassinations. It was almost like it was a step in an evolution almost of a plan. Like you said, it kind of had an effect on the whole world from that point onwards. And I know in your work also that you, for that intimidation reason, and in your work also you make connections between the Olaf Palme assassination and Kennedy assassination. How did you kind of make the links between these different killings, and you know, instead of it being like a localized assassination, it was part of a bigger picture kind of?
To start with, I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. I thought JFK was one case. I thought Robert Kennedy was another one. I thought Martin Luther King was a third. I thought the Swedish Prime Minister. I had no idea that there were any kind of connections, even with assassination of the Che Guevara or John Lennon or so many others of these high key individuals. I thought that they were totally separate. It was only after years and years of intense studies. I mean, I even traveled to different countries trying to find books and so on, because before the internet, it was a whole different world when it came to how to find information. So, I mean, I've spent years of my life in libraries, down in archives and so on, trying to find these things. But it was like 2-3 years after I really was totally diving into the JFK case that I started becoming interested in Robert Kennedy, then Malcolm X. And I started seeing, and Martin Luther King, I started seeing that it was almost like there was this bullet point list that was being used, and like a template that was being used for these assassinations. Not that they were carried out in a similar way. I mean, there were different variations, but the whole setup was the same. And I mean, just like some of the ingredients, it's a lone crazy guy. When there's a lone crazy guy being accused of anything, I would very strongly suggest, please look deeper into it. Because the reason why they want a lone individual is because then by law, there's no conspiracy, meaning a conspiracy is like when 2 or more individuals are involved in criminal activity. That is the definition of a conspiracy. So if it's only one person, then the legal way of dealing with it is totally different. And especially if this person is suicided or, ends up dead very quickly, then it's case closed right away. Boom, thank you and goodbye. And then the reason for him that they need him crazy is because then there's no need for the motive. They can just say, well, he was crazy or fanatic, and that's another one. He's a fanatic. Then that would be the only explanation you get. And once again, if he's crazy and then dead as well, thank you, folks, go back to sleep and just let us get on with our stuff. So when I started seeing these similarities, I started to make very detailed lists of different aspects of these. And I started seeing, oh my God, they fit in, you know, also where not only the patsies there, but you have the same, one of the signs that will show you that something foul is going on is not what is being done, but what is not being done. You know, like if you and I do something stupid, within 2 minutes, the police will be there. If the Swedish Prime Minister will be shot down, there will happen nothing for about 5 hours. Do you see? It's like that. It's absolutely absurd, but that is very often what happens. They close down all kinds of ways of communication. They totally isolate the area. They're in control of all parameters. And then, boom, the shots are fired, not by a lone crazy individual. They're carried out by professionals, many times triangular fire, multiple shooters, multiple getaway cars, and so on. And the patsy is only there to take the fall for it. But it is also, in these cases, very important to understand that the investigation that follows is part of the crime. These people that are up there doing the press conferences and we're looking for this and we're looking for that, or we have to stand united in the face of terror, they are the ones that are part of the operation. And the same with since the investigation is only there to support the official story, patsy, 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 and go after people like myself who don't back down. That is the task of the official investigation. Absolutely not to find the truth. They will just do, they went that away, they went that away. That's their task. And deal with media, pump them with more or less fake things about the patsy. And then also, another one that is important to understand is that if we do not give up and we keep asking questions saying, listen, I mean, come on, what you've shown us is absolutely not true. If enough of us keep going and doing this, in the end, they will say, well, if you don't trust us, we will elect a commission. And there will be a beautiful commission that will, the name will be some important or some really like the Truth and Wisdom Commission or the Investigative, some big fancy name. But these commissions are only there as part of the cover-up. They will go in there and then they will take over and they say, okay, we will look into this for sure. And then for about a year, they will be behind locked doors. I tell you, they will be throwing darts, having brandy and a big cigar, laughing at the rest of us. Then they come up, they haven't shaved, and they look, well, we're going to go back into heavy negotiations and investigate. They're doing absolute fuck all. That's what they do. And then this will be carried out for about a few months. Then there will be a scandal, some kind of thing where maybe one of the members in the commission have misused a credit card. He bought a candy bar, that was not... and he used a government credit card. Oh my God, how horrible. So he will be thrown out because this is, the level of integrity and justice in this commission is so high that we cannot even accept a candy bar. Absolutely not there. It's there to drag out the time. So there will be this scandal and they knock one of them out. They throw this individual out. And then they say, well, because of all of this, we will have to elect a new person, and that will, for us, then we have to inform this person what we've been doing for the last 3-4 months or whatever. And that informing the new person will take 2-3 more months. I mean, how difficult can it be? Anyway, it's a method of dragging it out. And then they would give out like a stack of papers, like 1,500 pages, that says more or less nothing, with very little organization to the whole thing. So it's very difficult for someone like myself to find anything of value in it. And that's the whole idea. But it will bore you to tears, and slowly it will just ease out, and people are just fed up with the whole thing. They read too much of it in the newspaper, nothing is ever happening. And in the end, we will just forget about it. That's the plan. And if we don't accept the first commission, then they will just appoint another commission. Like after the Olaf Palme assassination, we had 3. We had 3 of them, costing billions for taxpayers. So it was, once I started seeing that it seemed like there was this bullet point list being used, then that was about a year after the assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister. And since I'm born in Denmark, but I grew up in Sweden, so I believed that I lived in a country where I could trust the police, the authorities. I was totally, buying into that. And then I started seeing the exact same thing happening in Sweden, following the exact same template. I was like, that blew my mind, because I said, how is that possible? And also, how is it possible that these other ones are following like a template if they're carried out by different forces? So what I did was I checked with the other cases, and let's say that in Sweden on this template, like the first 4 bullet points, like tick, 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 tick. So I thought, what if I'm correct here, then I should be able to predict the next step by looking at these other historical cases. And at that point, I can't remember what it was. I just checked the other ones and I did, okay, that this is what happened next, this is what happened. That was the same on the other cases. So I said, if this is true, then this is what will happen in Sweden. 2 weeks later, shaboom, the exact same thing. I mean, I tell you, the shock for me to understand that my whole understanding of Sweden as a nation was built on absolute lies, because the other ones were built on total corruption from the inside, including the investigations and the commission. I just couldn't believe that it was happening in Sweden as well. But that was when I started getting an understanding of, holy crap, this is so much bigger than what I ever thought. And then in 1996, I think it was, this was many years down the line after I was looking into the Olaf Palme case and the other ones and comparing. The difference between me and other people looking into it was that I had a much broader understanding than people that have just looked into one of each of these cases, which is normally the case, that you get specialized in one thing. My specialty became to see a wider picture. And well, I devoted my life. I moved up to Stockholm as well, trying to understand what happened in our country, because nobody was looking into it. We were just a handful little group. And this took me down, I think, almost 12 years that I devoted myself to finding out this. I mean, I worked crap jobs. I was a bus driver. I was cleaner, whatever, just to be able to fund this. Plus, also, I wanted to play badminton with this beautiful girl, but she didn't want me. So, but that was another reason why I moved up there. So, but it led me into this area that I had no idea existed. I mean, for me, like secret agents and assassins in Sweden, I mean, are you kidding me? I just couldn't believe it. And yet I managed to track down several of them. And this is where once you start seeing how they're carried out and the forces behind these operations, which is also why it's so important to look into and identify what actually happened, because these forces are working very hard and have been for decades trying to take over this world. And one of the ways they do that is by eliminating anyone who stands up against them. So this is what led me down to, and more I started identifying shooters in Dealey Plaza and the other assassinations. I started finding the networks, how they were connected. And then I started seeing the exact same people popping up in other cases and other cases and other cases. And over the years, I even become friends with some people that were involved with these teams of assassins, like Chip Tatum, a CIA whistleblower. And through him, my understanding and confirmations of what I've been saying was amplified many times over. So this is when I started also seeing that the world of assassins on that level is very, very small, according to insiders. Very, very small. They just use them again and again and again and again. And I know I saw one interview once. There was this person who was involved in it was about illegal arms trafficking, where Sweden was involved in the US and Bush and all of the same old story. And he was being interviewed and asked the question, but why do you use the same people again and again? And he just laughed to the reporter and said, why change a winning team? I mean, why would you? If you got a good car mechanic, where do you go the next time? You go to the same guy. If you find a good dentist, where would you go? You go to the good dentist. And same here, if you got a good team of assassins that are really skilled at what they do and loyal enough or compromised enough so you can control them, just use them over and over. And this is what they've been doing.
The saying is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if you have an effective team, why change it? And it explains certainly the connections between those high-profile assassinations anyway. And also another area I know that you've studied into, there's a natural progression, I suppose, was into stuff like false flag events, but also the mass shootings too, because it's not only, big high-profile political characters who get shot. Nowadays, especially in the States, there seems to be these mass shootings that are cropping up all of the time. So tell us about some of the ones that you've looked into, and then what are the connections between them, if any?
I'm not really sure when I got into this area, because I was very focused on these high profile cases. But then I think it was the tracking down of assassins and soldiers of fortune being used in different operations that led me into this area. Because when you look at it, the reason why it's so important to understand the JFK assassination and 9/11, and which are carried out by more or less the same power structure, different people on the ground level, but the power structure in the background and their agenda, the so-called New World Order, is the same. So this is why it's so important to identify people and see what are they up to today. They blew up the buildings in 2001, but what are they doing now? Because we're being pushed into a corner very, very fast, where they try to get us into a position where they can just grab us by the balls and totally control us in all areas of life. Dark future if they get away with it. So one of the things that I found over the years was that there were, in the early 60s, there was a very ultra-secret hit team called Operation 40, or Group 40, that was created under President Dwight Eisenhower, in cooperation together with Alan Dulles, the head of the CIA, and some other key people, very high level. And what they wanted was to have a mobile unit, a hit team that could be used anywhere in the world, wherever they had problems with a president or a business or whatever, that these individuals could just be sent there and take care of business. So the task was given to Richard Nixon, who was vice president at the time, and he then contacted people in the CIA, some old wolves like Ted Shackley, the blonde ghost, David Atlee Phillips, the controller of Lee Harvey Oswald, among many other things, and also E. Howard Hunt, who is part of the JFK assassination, also part of the whole Watergate burglary thing. So this Group 40 was then created out of 80 people, where 20 of them were educated as, or trained as absolute high-level assassins. And when you look at so many of these different high-level cases, you will see that it's the exact same people coming from Operation 40 that were then part of these assassinations. Like I said, JFK, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, Malcolm X to a certain extent. They were part of the assassination attempt on Bob Marley. They killed John Lennon. They killed Robert Smith in South Africa. They killed Olaf Palme in Sweden, and so on. The same structure. So, but over the years, it has not been enough just to take out the sort of key people as enemies that needed to be terminated. Instead, to be able to control the masses, the few in power have always had the same problem. And I think it goes back to the old Roman times, and so where you had a small little group of people in Rome controlling an empire, a massive empire. And this was way before the internet and telephones or normal mail or whatever. So how could they do it? And the answer to this is only through deception. It is only through deception that so few people can control the rest of us. And the key to everything is through fear. They need us fearful for us to accept their agenda. So the old Romans came up with an old template called problem, reaction, solution. This is super important to understand. They, the few in power, secretly create a problem. This problem nowadays could be a mass shooting, it could be a so-called terror attack, it could be a virus scare, it could be a financial crash or whatever. The reason why they secretly create this problem is for us, the normal person, to have an outcry of panic, a reaction. They want an emotional reaction so that we don't think, we just react emotionally. So it's problem, boom, reaction, and then in comes the solution. Because when something awful happens, we turn towards Big Brother or people we believe are there to protect us, not understanding that it's actually them who have done it to us, saying, please, please help us, help us. And they will then say, well, the only way we can protect you with this horrible problem is, and boom, in comes the solution. And the solution is every single time something we would never, ever have accepted had it not been for the problem, reaction, solution. And also the solution every single time is I have to give up our liberties, our civil rights, our human rights. It's more and more in with robocops, martial law, militarized police, CCTV cameras, body scanners, backscatters, you name it. Control, 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 control. All based on the problem. Now, in Europe, we don't have so many guns. So really, guns is not a problem for these forces that want to take over. But in the US, it's a massive problem because there are millions of guns there. So you have the whole of US is like a fully equipped army, with fully automatic weapons and I don't know, everything they got in that country. Incredible. So what they're trying to do, like every single dictator through the history of the human experience, I think, when a dictator has taken over, these people are very often extreme cowards and they are very afraid of getting hurt themselves. So what they're trying to do is to get the population to give up their weapons so that once they do that, in we go and we can take over, not a problem whatsoever. So the mass shootings will be in countries where they have problems with guns. And there's been some very soft variations like Port Arthur in Australia, or you have in Finland, or shootings here. But the main thing is in the US where the guns are. So what they want to try and tell us is that the guns are the problem. We're back to problem, reaction, solution. They want the guns to be the problem so that we go, oh my God, something needs to be done. And the solution, give up the guns. That is what they're trying to do. So, and also you will have that these mass shootings take place in high schools, colleges, and so on. The reason for that is young people. It's emotional. It's the emotional impact they're looking for. So it would be teenagers, young, beautiful girls. If there are teachers there would be female teachers most of the time, or daycare centers, things like that. So it's women and children. That's key to get the emotions going. Like old guys, or if you blow up a tractor or whatever, wood doesn't work, or a hospice or wouldn't work. Young kids, women and children. Sometimes they use nurses and nuns as well to get the emotional impact going. And should it be a man, very often the target is a priest. Or depending on what the operation is on, sometimes it can be a war veteran if that is what they're trying to go after or whatever. So problem, reaction, solution, super, super important. And when it comes to these mass shootings, I also thought that these were totally separate events. I did not understand that they were connected until I started seeing a very clear pattern of the exact same script being used, the exact same countries being hit, very often the same police districts, very often the same law enforcing officers, the same people, the same coroners popping up in different areas. So I started looking into it very, very in extreme detail. And what I also tried to do is go on location. So I've been to, I don't know how many countries now, but I think more or less all where there's been alleged terror attacks here in Europe. I've been there, more or less all of them, sometimes with an undercover photographer, because we try to go there as soon as it happens. And also I've been to several places in the US where these mass shootings or top-level murders have happened. So it's only since I started going to so many of these different places and I'm starting to identify the people doing it that I come to the understanding that they're actually carried out by the very same forces. And so you will see that what we're looking at here is not what happened in the UK or in Ireland or France or in the US. They are coordinated. These attacks are coordinated. It's a global attack carried out by US military, private contractors. You've got NATO troops and from the Gladio network as well here in Europe, where these forces are being used to carry out these operations to give us the impression of that the whole world is filled with Muslim terrorists that want to blow us up, and that's the whole thing. But after all of these years, I still don't think I've encountered one real Muslim terrorist. I have not. I should be a super expert on them, but I have not. Instead, what I keep bumping into is inside job, state-sponsored terrorism, where we're looking at the exact same thing, problem, reaction, solution. And then with agencies in the background like CIA, Mossad, the Israeli Mossad is always there, MI6 sometimes. It all depends on where these operations are carried out by Mossad. But Mossad and CIA, which looks like two separate entities on a street level, the higher up you come in the power pyramid, they're connected at the top. So this is how they carry these things out.
And then with, I know you've made some, you started off with that idea of getting, seeing the patterns and all of that. So which events were you able to predict ahead of time?
It was in I'm going to answer in a little round way. In the fall of 2014, I was contacted by an insider. I still don't know who that individual were, who said that you're doing a really good job, but you're missing out on the clues. And I said, I'm not sure I understand. What are you saying? He said, you're missing out on the clues. Are you not aware that they leave clues about the upcoming attacks? And I said, why on earth would they do such a stupid thing? And then he said, you have to understand that they are very fearful of the so-called law of karma. You know, what you do comes back to you. And so he said, what they do and what they have to do for their own sake is to leave clues about what they're up to, because their twisted way of understanding the law of karma, according to this individual, is that if they show us, even in subtle ways, and we do not react, then the bad karma is on our shoulders. The negative karma comes on us because they have shown what they're up to. And in addition, if they manage to pull the operation off, even though they showed us, according to them, they will even gain good karma. So they have to do it. And I was like, that is absolutely just twisted, but whatever. So I started looking into it from a different point of view. And it was in the fall of 2014, the first one that got me suspicious that started showing me that he was could be correct was a failed attempt on a power plant just outside Dublin, your home country.
Oh, wow.
So that was then connected to Charlie Hebdo in France, and I had information about 4 possible upcoming attacks. It was Dublin, France, Copenhagen, and Florence in Italy. So when the first Dublin and then Charlie Hebdo happened, I thought, whoa, could it be that this individual was correct? And if so, then Denmark or Copenhagen would be next on the list. So I went out big time and warned about this whole thing, because when you look at these operations, there's always a drill. There's always a drill before one of these operations go down. And the reason for this drill is for the forces who carry them out to close off certain streets, certain areas, so that they get rid of normal people. They don't want people to see what they're up to. Also to get vehicles in positions, explosives, smoke bombs, crisis actors, directors, controllers, catering, makeup facilities, all of these things set up. That is what they use the drill for. Plus they rehearse, and I believe that a lot of the high quality still photos are taken during the drill, not the live event. Also, the video that we normally see, I call it the catwalk of death, where somebody walks around with a video camera, a blurry video camera, filming all of the victims more or less from behind. So you don't really see any details. But that is also recorded during the drill and will then be blended with live stream footage from the event once it goes live. So what I normally do is I try to tell people when there is a drill somewhere in their hometown, or to go there the day before it's set to take place, bring friends, bring family with cameras, and then start filming these individuals when they start setting this whole thing up. Because it could be a drill for our protection. It's always for our protection. Or they could be up to something bad. And if it's something bad, then the last thing they want is exposure. So I always suggest film them, make it very, very obvious to them that they are being observed, that they are being filmed. Because if they're up to no good, this will be an extremely difficult thing for them to deal with. And so I did that, and then it didn't happen the day I said in Copenhagen. It happened exactly 1 month on the hour later. So when that happened, boom, I thought, either I'm just incredibly lucky or I'm onto something here. I'm onto something here. And so I thought, okay, this is 3 out of 4. So I went out straight on international radio. Every time I find out something, I go on international radio. I've done between 500 and 1,000 interviews, so I've got in really good contact with so many different programs. So I warned about Italy, and just a few days after, there was a warning that ISIS had a failed attack in Florence, exactly where I pointed out. And ISIS, for people who are not aware, is their boogeyman, because to control us with fear, they need a threat from the outside. So they have created these different outside threats, like a dog barking at us, so that we will come back to and say, please, please, we need protection. So they need that one. And if there isn't a threat out there, they will create it. Exactly like they did with Al-Qaeda, which is a total CIA operation. Al-Qaeda even means database. That's the meaning of the word Al-Qaeda. And that is the CIA's own database of their own agents trained against the Russians during the invasion from Russia and Afghanistan. But then after that, they said, why don't we use them instead and turn them into a threat, a boogeyman? So this is what they did. They used the exact same forces they did. But we're talking inside jobs as a rough out here to freak us out. And then after a few years, when they couldn't use Al-Qaeda anymore, they couldn't even scare babies with the name Al-Qaeda, they just upgraded and then started calling it ISIS, and then ISIL or IS or whatever, Daesh. They keep changing the name so that we can't really get a grip of what's going on. The total inside construction by the US and by Israel. ISIS even stands for Israeli Secret Intelligence Services. That is the correct meaning of ISIS.
Yeah, they're telling you to their face what they're up to. And it's back to that hidden in plain sight thing. Like you were saying, they feel like they're obliged to actually tell us what they're up to while they're doing it, but it goes over most people's heads. And that's why I think you were able to predict stuff like this, because the more you're in contact with the events and the situations, the more obvious it becomes. But to the average person in the street, they're not going to notice what's going on. And you know, I like to cater for people who are totally new to this material. So if we look at the concept of false flag operations, can you define for us what they are, and also give us some examples, if anyone's skeptical about this stuff, what examples do you have of false flags that are pretty relatively easy to understand?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say that over the years, I very precisely predicted 15 of these alleged terror attacks on international radio up to 2 months before they actually happened. So I just come back from a conference in Mexico where I had a presentation called The Ultimate Dot Connector, where I showed this is what I found, boom, that's when it happened. This is what I warned about, boom, that's when it happened. This is what I want, boom, that's when it happened. And this goes on an international round thing, because we're looking at a mobile unit, almost like a rock band on tour, going from country to country in C-130 military planes to army bases, then being transported on with buses on location where they carry out the drill, train everything, and then boom, carry out what is then being reported as a terror attack. So I find it very helpful that I've been able to predict these 15 events, and it's registered on all of these different programs way before it happens. So how can someone like myself predict it? Because, for instance, I need to show you some of the connections before I go into false flags. But as an example, I found the clues at the Fort Lauderdale airport shooting in Florida. I found the clues for the attack, the Melbourne car attack. At the Melbourne car attack, I found the clues for the Westminster Bridge attack in London, which I predicted 1 month before it happened. Then that one went, and I found the clues for the Stockholm truck attack. The Stockholm truck attack led, it just goes like this. So it's very important to understand that these are not local operations. These are not local attacks. They're carried out on a global scale, in all according to the New World Order's agenda, which is to take over the whole world and create a one world fascist state with a one world army. They're not to protect us, but to control us. A one world digital currency, a one world chip population, and so on. So very dark, not nice future if they get away with it. So one of the things that is important to understand are the methods they're using. So it's problem, reaction, solution. That's one of them. Key. You got another one, diversion. Something says boom over here, and you look that way, they get on with their stuff over here. So I often suggest when something says boom here, look the other way. See what are they trying. And the third one is divide and conquer. They want us to hate and fear each other and blame each other instead of looking, where is this problem really rooted? So one of the key methods they have against us is PSYOPs, false flag operations. So what is a false flag operation? A false flag is an old naval term that was invented several hundred years ago when empires like Great Britain or Spain or Holland were traveling around with their ships, invasion, rape, plunder, that whole agenda. But sometimes, and they had the military power to do it. They could just go in and destroy country after country if they wanted to. But sometimes that could really cause problems with trade agreements and international relationships with other nations. So I don't know who came up with it, but we're back to the PSYOP world here. Somebody came up with the idea, why don't we put our enemy's flag on one of our own ships, then we let our own ship attack us, so that instead of us being the bad boys and the bullies that go out and do all of these horrific things, we become the victim. And as a victim, it's justified for us to defend ourselves. So instead of an invasion, rape, and plunder, it's defense, rape, and plunder. It's the exact same thing, but it's a PSYOP. So a false flag operation is very, very important to understand, because the attacked one is actually the attacker. The attacked one is actually the attacker, meaning that so many of these operations, you will see that it's being blamed on a lone crazy individual or fanatic, boom. But the real people who have done it are the ones that were attacked. The attacked one is actually the attacker. So you will see that after mass shootings and many of these, when they're not real, which is more or less every single time, the people that come up at the press conferences and are answering questions, they're totally involved in the operation. They are the ones doing it to us. The eyewitnesses and the reporters very, very often on location, part of the operation. And the eyewitness and the reporter is there for problem, reaction, solution. They need to deliver it nowadays very fast, because we are so used with the remote to just change channels. So in the old days, they could do it slowly, boom, reaction, in came the solution. But now they need to deliver right away, bam, bam, bam. And this is very often done through mainstream media, which is controlled in the US. I think it's 96% of all mainstream media, including publishing houses, radio stations, you name it, is owned by 6 or fewer companies. And these companies work together as well. So it's not to be a conspiracy theorist to say that maybe we cannot trust this whole thing. So it will go like this. Something happened, boom, horrible, that's a problem. So there will be a reporter, and the reporter will say to the witness, so what did you see? Well, the witness will say, oh, it was horrible. There were dead people everywhere. There was blood, there was chopped off heads, whatever, to get the emotions going. So problem, boom. Then through the witness, you get that thing that, oh my God, that's awful. Did they chop the head of that little baby or whatever? They will spice it up so that it will really fit whatever they want. And then the reporter will be the one that delivers the solution. So it will be like, oh, that's really horrible. Well, that just shows you yet again, we need more gun control or body scanners or back scanners. They will serve you that. So you can sit back in your chair the next time it happens and just say, boom, okay, let's wait for it. Then in comes the witness that is being interviewed, and you say, oh, that's really awful. If it's true, step back, take a deep breath, and just wait for it. And very often you will see the reporter come with a solution. So for instance, I'll give you a few examples. When the Charlie Hebdo shooting happened in Paris, it is said that there were these two brothers that were, well, they dressed up as terrorists and they killed a lot of people at a newspaper and a police officer. So that's awful. And when the reporter was asking the witness would say, oh, there were dead bodies everywhere, horrible. And the reporter then said, well, that just shows you that we need more airport security. Where the hell did anything have to do with anything about airports? Nothing. And in Norway, when there was the mass shooting at Utøya, there were like 69 young kids that is said to have been shot on this island, and they blew up the government building as well.
Oh, Breivik, was it? Anders Breivik?
He's the guy that is accused for it. It's absolutely not true, the official story. I've done many presentations about Norway. There's one called When Terror Struck Norway. If you please look to that, you will get a better understanding. But anyway, when the chief of the secret police in Norway, when she was interviewed after the incident, we're talking about a mass shooting and the blowing up of the government building. She said, well, this would never have happened had the population been microchipped. What the heck? What did that have to do with anything? But it's when you're emotionally open. You can see that in commercials as well. It's grandfather and an old dog or whatever, and a sunset in the background, to get the emotions going. And then in comes, buy the next insurance with us. They get you emotional and boom, they deliver. And it's the same here. We have this, oh my God, it's so awful. You're so open. And then that's when they knock it in and knock it in. So we're being played, folks. We are being played.
Yeah, and for those of us who who understand how the system operates and that this is a global game that's been going on for a long time. I know this is kind of off track slightly, but the occult manipulation side of it, at higher up the pyramid, they know how to force people's brains into a lower state of consciousness through fear and terror. And like you said, that makes them susceptible to absorbing this trash narrative. And as our last item here, because this is kind of central to your work, the concept of conspiracy theorist, which is it's turned into kind of a joke nowadays. That must be annoying for someone like yourself because of the lifetime of work you've put in. That the truth is complex and it's hidden. And when people come along with this term conspiracy theorist, they're programmed to immediately, laugh at anything that doesn't come from the system, any explanation or theory. They're programmed to react that way. So what's your thoughts on this, considering everything that you know?
No, conspiracy theorist is a CIA term that was created after the JFK assassination, to be used against people like myself. As soon as somebody start asking relevant questions, really asking critical questions, what happened? this is when it becomes a problem for them. So they created this term, because the thing is with this term is that you have, as soon as you say theory, you have a doubt. That's the whole point. As soon as you combine the word conspiracy with theory, there's a doubt. And this is where people can be made jokes or, made fools of, or whatever, the tinfoil hat thing. By the way, tinfoil hats actually works against radiation. So it is a joke, but at the same time, a joke with some seriousness to it. But it was created and weaponized against people like myself. For me, I'm so not interested in theories at all. I mean, I couldn't care less about a theory. Everybody can have a theory. I don't care. I'm looking for facts. I'm looking for the proof and the evidence. And for me, it's not important to prove my case. I have nothing to prove. I'm just trying to find out what happened, who's doing it to us, who benefits, and what are they up to now? So we can stop it. My whole intention is to let the truth expose these dark forces and just switch the light on. I mean, that's why my website is lightonconspiracies.com. It's like, because what I'm trying to do is get into the belly of the beast and just aim the light there, totally nonviolent, but let the light of truth do the work. And this is the beauty of it all.
Yeah, that's a great way to finish, Ola, and definitely for the viewers, check out Ola's website, lightonconspiracies.com. So, Ola, I think, just to finish off here, I think you've done fantastic work and you continue to do it. And I love specialists because you focus on these key areas that are so important and really dig up all the information that we need. So long may it continue, and wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you so much, Evan. And would it be okay if I end with a prayer?
Sure, go ahead. Yep, absolutely.
I'm not a religious person. I find that religion most of the time, unfortunately, is used by the rulers to control us and manipulate us. But I am a spiritual being like we all are. And there's this prayer that means a lot to me, and it goes like this. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May everyone, and especially the ones who hurt us, be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May the light of truth overcome all darkness, so victory to that light.
Ola, thank you very much for your time. Excellent.
Thank you.
You are watching Resolving Reality. That was my conversation with the veteran and specialist author and researcher Olaf Dammegard. Take a look at Ola's website, lightonconspiracies.com, subscribe to his newsletter, be his patron on Patreon, and check out his books and articles as well. Support Resolving Reality on YouTube, share those videos and subscribe, and also make sure you check out those Resolving Reality Radio podcast episodes. Visit our website for all of our other platforms and podcasts, resolvingreality.com. Thanks for watching, until next time, and enjoy Resolving Reality.